Hi, this is Krista. Welcome back to Made to Be Whole. Stay tuned to this week's episode with my favorite daughter, Isabel.
Made to be Whole is intended for informational purposes only. It's not intended to replace the advice or care of a licensed healthcare professional. Participating in this podcast does not constitute a provider patient relationship with Krista Michener, AHP Integrative Health, or any of the guests featured on Made to Be Whole. Krista Michener, AHP Integrative Health, and any featured guests aren't responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from use of information obtained in this podcast or associated materials. Please consult a healthcare professional for any health-related concerns that you are experiencing.
So, this week we are going to be talking to my daughter, Isabel, who is almost 21. She's my only girl. She has five brothers, so she's truly oppressed. But she's also navigated this world of vector borne infections, and she's here to talk a little bit about her journey, what was helpful, what hasn't, and give some hope from those of you who are struggling. So, welcome, Isabel.
Happy to be here.
So, why don't we start by giving a little bit of background about when your symptoms started? So, Isabel was a very healthy, active, confident child. And then, was it fourth grade, Izzy?
It was fourth grade.
It was fourth grade, and everything crashed pretty hard and fast. Can you describe what you remember about that?
Well, first off, I remember fourth grade being anxious all year. I really liked school and doing well in it, and then I got a teacher who was very, very strict and actually made one of my classmates cry. And I was terrified of her. And that just made my anxiety go into overdrive. And
And
that
anxiety wasn't really much of an issue before, was it?
oh no, it started about that year. Even started some anxiety medication. And then I think it was sometime in March, there was supposed to be this big test, and I woke up for it feeling miserable. My stomach hurt so much. And logically, I knew I should stay home, but my brain was, like I said before, absolutely terrified of that teacher, and I was just going to go until mom just had me sit on the couch and told me I was staying. And I was hoping that in like a day or two the pain would pass and I'd go back to school, and that did not happen at all.
And so, was that your first migraine, do you think?
Yeah, migraines, a lot of people think they're just headaches, but it's more than that. It kind of involves the whole body.
Well, and if I remember, I didn't keep strict track, but you were in bed for days and almost weeks at one point. I mean, you had
Oh yeah.
really severe, severe pain.
Oh yeah, it was at least a month or two. I could, like, some days I'd get out of bed, but most of the time I was miserable. I was in pain, and everything else made it worse.
And so our journey to try to find help was a little difficult. There was something definitely different. I mean, I knew that there was some situational anxiety, like you said, because of the teacher, but at the same time, the way you responded to that was out of character too. Do you know what I mean? Like in the past, even if you were in an anxious situation, you had more confidence. You bounced back more easily. It was almost like you were a shell of yourself, and then you had this really, really persistent pain. And I think it's hard because whenever there's any mental health symptom involved, then everybody wants to blame everything on the mental health. So, well, she has headaches because she's anxious, and then blame the patient and tell them how they need to just not be anxious. And it was just much, much bigger than that. And it progressed to the point that you were nauseous, your hair was matted, you had this really long hair down to your waist that you loved. Your hair was a matted wreck because you had been in bed so much. like I said, you were nauseous. You started having visual disturbances, so you would see. Describe that for me. I'm not going to tell people.
Well, the best way I could describe it is tinted glasses. So
Mm-hmm.
there'd be little spots of tinted color,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty weird. But
I
for the anxiety thing where everyone blames it for being anxious and I should just get over it, I tell them if I could just get over it, I would. Like, I don't like being anxious. If I could make it stop, I would. But,
right.
yeah.
And I remember with the vision part, I remember actually taking you to the ER once because you were talking about seeing blood on the streets. And I know now that you were just using your little 10-year-old vocabulary to describe what you were seeing. Like you said, now you would say it's like tinted glasses. There were patches of red everywhere, but you said it looks like there's blood on the streets. And I'm going, okay, in my training and experience, and I wasn't a nurse practitioner at that point, but I knew that when there were visual disturbances, there's something going on with the brain. And so we took you to the ER, and I still remember this guy came in, he came back, he talked to us really, really briefly. He went and talked to his attending. He came back 5 minutes later and told me that you just needed to see a psychiatrist. That was the answer. And I
And
said,
I
that's
remember hearing that.
you do? Okay. And
Oh,
I
yeah, like,
remember saying, I've already taken her to a psychiatrist. I have nothing against psychiatrists, but there's something going on with my daughter that's different. She's in constant pain. She's seeing things, and they diagnosed you with visual hallucinations. That's what they called it.
yeah, I remember hearing that and just wanting to cry. Because, like,
Right.
I'm in pain. Everything hurts. Why
Hmm.
aren't the adults helping? The only one who actually listened to me and, like, actually cared was you and Dad. Mm.
And I think that was what your anxiety was compounded because you brought this up later, but it kind of shattered your worldview of adults and helpers and teachers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Um, well, as a kid, you're always told if you have a problem to go to adults, that they'll help, they'll fix it. And until then, anytime I had a problem and went to adults, they were really helpful. They were kind, they were patient. They believed me, and even if they thought it was trivial, they didn't exactly treat it that way. They cared about what I thought and how I felt. And then suddenly there was an adult who wasn't that way, who I couldn't trust, and that suddenly made me wonder, who else can I not trust? Because the way everyone's acting right now, with me being in pain, it doesn't seem like I can trust anyone but my family.
Can you give us some examples? And I don't bring this up because I want to say, oh, life is so bad and there are all these terrible people, but I think it's instructive for people to know what not to say and do and what was unhelpful. So you had a lot of unhelpful adults who were professionals. Can you share with us some of the unhelpful things they said and did?
Well, I had a school counselor, and she was something else. I had been attacked by a dog that year, and one of my classmates came in with scars on their side of their face because they got attacked by a dog too. And I kind of freaked out. Two of my friends were pretty worried. I tried to push it down, but in the end I got called into the school counselor office because they asked, or I guess told someone that I needed help. She sat me down and was the most condescending adult I have ever met. She basically told me my problems weren't real, I wasn't being logical, and I don't know if she used the word stupid, but that's how she came off.
Well, I remember because she called me and she said that this girl had been attacked by a dog and that triggered something for you, but she was very condescending talking to me too, saying that this girl's attack was much worse than your attack because she got bit on the face and you had only been bit on the arm. And it was bizarre. I thought, you're a school counselor? Do you not understand PTSD and this little girl who's scared and it's brought back a bunch of other stuff? I mean, it was just, It was bizarro land. And
Not
unfortunately, until that year, there was a really, really good school counselor, and then she retired. And then I don't know where they pulled this one from, but she was special in all
the
domains
wrong
and
ways.
extremely unhelpful. And then I remember too at that school, the principal, who I actually liked, I thought he was a good guy, but I remember him calling me once to tell me that you had been disrespectful because so we had this thing with school. For a while, you weren't going to school. We finally got you going back. You would get upset, and I'd say, Izzy, just go. If you don't feel well, tell them that you don't feel well, and they'll help you. And you said, no, they won't. They'll just take my temperature and say, you don't have a fever, go back to class. So there was a time you had gone to school, you had a migraine, you went and laid down, and then they said, okay, you've been here long enough, go back to class. And the principal called to say that you were disrespectful and that you had been laying there in the dark and you were perfectly fine. But then when they told you you had to go back to class, you got upset and said you had a headache. So clearly you were faking it. And I'm thinking, you're an adult. Have you never met anyone with a migraine? Being in a quiet, dark place is one of the best things you can do for a migraine. And I told him, I said, well, I'm actually really proud of her for standing up for herself because this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Do you remember that?
Not specifically, but I do agree with the part where I'm like, if I don't have a fever, they're just going to send me back to class.
Right.
That's what they do. If you're feeling crummy, you go to the nurse's office, they take your temperature, and if you don't have a fever, then you're not sick.
Right.
Like, there could be a million other things. You could probably be there bleeding out, and they're like, you don't have a fever, go back to class.
So the beginning of what we later learned was related to Babesia and Bartonella really altered your educational journey because you loved school before all this started. I
I
mean, loved, loved,
adored
loved.
school. I
Yeah.
loved it. I I just loved it. Like I loved learning new things and I had lots of fun and even if I didn't have the most amount of friends compared to everyone else, I had at least one or two friends in my class and I talked to them, I played, I was happy. And
You
then
were.
I kept getting sick and it was hard to go to school and I missed out a lot of school and I was homeschooled for a few good years. It's like I
Yeah,
tried.
so we made a lot of accommodations. So we moved at the beginning of sixth grade.
Yep.
We moved to a different part of the state, a different district. And I will say that most of the people at school there were very kind. They
Oh
still
yeah.
didn't really know what to do about it, but they were very kind. And I remember the receptionist, when you'd have a migraine, she'd say, oh, I have a friend with those. It's so hard. And that helped a lot, but you were
Yeah.
still just unwell, which ultimately led to us trying homeschool, which was torture for me.
That's fair.
A variety of things. You ended up ultimately doing College Credit Plus, and then graduated from high school with an associate's degree, which was cool. But a lot of the things we did were kind of out of desperation, trying to find a situation that wasn't overwhelming sensory wise and emotionally, so that you could succeed. Now, we determined, I think it was right around 4 years ago, that we landed in this world of all these infections, and you were diagnosed first with Babesia. What was it like to find out that there might be a name for what had started all of
I was
this?
so happy. I was just like, there is a name for this. I'm not crazy. Like I knew I wasn't crazy, but like it's like I have a diagnosis, guys. I have like actual factual evidence right here. You can't say anything now. Not to mention it's just like knowing just knowing that there's a name and it it was a lot. Like it was a
Just a
lot.
relief.
Yeah. It's
So
like
you
goodness.
are, I think you're a miracle. You're doing so much better now. But one of the things we talked about, when we were talking about this episode and me asking Isabel, what would be helpful, do you think, for people to hear? If you were earlier on your journey, what things would you want them to know? So tell me what your answer to that
It
was.
gets better. Like it's going to be pretty slow going, but honestly, it's probably a good thing it was slow going cuz even going at a slow pace, it was very new. I had to relearn a lot of things that other people just understood. Like, suddenly I wasn't laying in bed feeling miserable all the time, and I kind of had to figure out what to do with that, like how I spend my time. And before, I just did bare minimum on all my schoolwork, on a lot of things, because that was all I could give. And so I'm now learning that I can give more, and how I can do that. It's a really strange experience, because like I'm working and then I feel like I need to stop, because that's usually when I would have to stop before, and it's really weird. But it gets better. It's slow, and there's a lot to learn.
I think one of the things that you do exceptionally well, though, is you've never been someone, thankfully, who's that bothered about what other people think about you, which I think is a gift. And you have continued to make accommodations for yourself without being so concerned about what you should be doing. I'm doing the air quotes there for the should be doing. You know that, okay, yes, my abilities now are different than they would be if I didn't have this, but they are what they are. What can I do to adapt? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't seem to spend too much time grieving what is lost or what could have been. Is that accurate?
Kind of like I do miss a lot of the missed opportunities I could have had. Like, I didn't get to practice my social skills and other essential skills that everyone else has, like managing time and how to properly study. Like, I'm learning this now, and that's hard, but it's also like, but that's just how it is. There's no reason for me to, like, I'll grieve, but I'm not
But
going
you
to
don't
let that,
wallow in it.
I don't want to let it take away
Right. I mean,
anything
I
else.
think there has to be space for both because grief is important and you have to be honest, but you can let all of that just completely mire you down and then you don't progress. One of the things that you developed that I think is really cool and helpful, this way of dealing with anxiety. So when you had panic and you were worried about what could go wrong, like if you didn't do well on a test or something, and she's developed this, she calls it hard won flexibility. Can you explain to people your thinking process and how you get through these situations that could be paralyzing to some people?
Well, I ask myself, what is the best thing that could happen and what's the worst thing that could happen? And then I develop a plan for if the worst thing that can happen, and then go on. Like, I was worried about my driver's test. The worst thing that could happen is I fail. Okay, then I'll just retake it in a few weeks. If I fail this test, okay, I might even fail the class because of this. I'll just retake the class. Like, nothing is worth my mental health. Like, yeah, I should try and work hard, but if it's gonna eat away at me and make me miserable, it's not worth it. I've had such limited energy that I've almost had to forcefully cut away at the anxiety, because, like, I couldn't. I could not. I did not have the energy. I did not
Well,
have
and
the energy to be anxious.
you even had a situation, and I hope this isn't oversharing. We can delete if it is. But do you remember in high school where there was a class you had to retake?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was I think it was a statistic class. Like, I just accidentally, I think I forgot to take one of the exams. Because of that, I flunked the class, and I just paid for the class since it was CCP, and then took it again.
I was so proud of you with that because that could be a real crisis for some people, but it was in the past and you took care of it and your life is just fine. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
fine. You did awesome. So as far as the diagnosis and treatment of these infections, talk us through from your perspective what die off was like, which things were helpful, which things were not helpful, and how you kind of navigated that.
Well, actually knowing what was going on was very helpful, for sure. Um, having a good support system with you guys, because you guys have a decent idea of what my limits are like. So you will probably tell me, just try and I'll do it. But if I tell you I can't continue, you listen to me and let me go home. Like, especially with social situations, those are loud, bright, smelly. And then there's people having me try new food, which almost always gives me a migraine. And you won't push me. Like, you'll push me forward, but if I tell you no, that I'm at my limit, you'll listen. Which is
You
really
also do a
nice.
pretty good job, though, telling us when you're at your limit, because I'm not a mind reader. Sometimes I figure it out, but sometimes, because it has historically varied, what you have
Oh
to give
yeah.
one week might be different. And so you do a good job saying, no, I can't. And so that helps me as a mom, and I think as parents too, for us to realize, even though something may not seem logical, does Isabel want to feel this way? Well, of course she doesn't.
I
No.
don't. And it was kind of really weird to just one day realize, with migraines, it's I get them just some like before I got them periodically. As I've gotten better, they don't appear unless I trigger them, usually with overwhelmed senses. And it was really, really weird to learn that taste and smell could be one of those senses. I literally had a Chipotle burrito and it had salsa on it, like really, really mild salsa. And it was apparently just too spicy and it gave me a migraine. I was crying while eating that burrito. I was hungry, but it was causing me pain. And it was a really, really weird experience to learn food can somehow give me a migraine. And it's not just strong flavors, it's new flavors. And that was I wasn't exactly a picky eater as a child, but as I got older, I started to get really picky, and all of my
But
siblings.
you've had to be. I mean,
Oh yeah,
that's the thing. You used to be a super adventurous eater.
yeah, and Daniel's like, "Here's your bland sandwich with no flavor," and I'm like, "Thanks."
Well, one of the things that helped that, even though it's still an issue, but when we realized you had thiamine, which is B1, that's on the low end, and we started supplementing that. And what pro tip, if you're low on thiamine, you have to take magnesium and potassium because they're cofactors for absorption. But you started being able to eat a broader range of things at that point. You didn't like them all,
Oh
but you
yeah,
at
like
least.
I didn't like them all, but I could eat them and not be in instant pain. Like
Right.
it's improved so much. I'm still technically a picky eater. Like I'll even eat new things and I like it, but I just can't. Like it's new and my brain is like, this tastes amazing. We can't eat it. This is very new. We don't have all the information apparently. Like the first few bites I like it, but the more I eat it, the more I hate it.
Body can't assimilate the new
Yeah, apparently, like
experience.
that was an experience to learn. Like, oh, okay. Apparently,
And
my
I would
brain
say
just hates
with
me.
migraines specifically, because that was one of your big symptoms.
Oh
So
yeah.
some of the things that we did early that made some difference, and I will backtrack and say we saw multiple neurologists. We tried all the stuff. We went once to an unnamed children's hospital where there was a program where they were doing, I think it was a type of biofeedback, but that woman was really nasty to you too because you wanted me to stay with you and you were just a little girl, and she just lectured you about how if you can't get it together and you have to have their mom there, you're not going to get what you need out of this program, and their children on a waiting list waiting to get better. And I mean, it was ridiculous.
I was
So
like,
we didn't
what,
do that.
12, 13?
So the
And like,
things I remember that we did that did help, we started magnesium and riboflavin, and remember we found that one migraine supplement that had those, and then feverfew and butterbur that helped some.
oh yeah, like I could tell the difference. It wasn't all gone, but any difference is a huge
You
difference.
noticed. You were on some medicine for a while to prevent, and that helped some too. It
It
wasn't.
lessened them. If I didn't take them, migraines more frequently, but it didn't go away, but it was like way less likely to get a migraine compared to how I was before. Still not very great though.
And then it seems like the real turning point was the Babesia and Bartonella treatment.
Oh, it was. It was like I remember migraines, but like once I started treatment with that, it just went down. Like before that I had I guess a steadiness, like I knew I could trigger them, some days just happened, but once the Babesia treatment started, I I almost never got a migraine unless I triggered it. And it was amazing.
They became the exception instead of the rule. You used to have,
Yes.
even if you didn't have a migraine, you had a daily headache, right?
Yeah, a daily low grade headache, tiredness and misery and just misery.
You were just dragging through
Oh
life.
yeah, like it was like I had
So if
some
you had
unseen
to
weight.
give advice to another, sorry, there was a lag. I was going to say if
But
you had to give advice to another person, another young person that's early on in their journey, what would you say? If you could talk to 10-year-old Izzy or 12-year-old Izzy, what would you say?
it gets better. Doesn't seem like it, and it's gonna take a while, but it gets better. And I'd also probably tell her not everyone's out there to get you. It sure does feel like it, and you're gonna notice some really annoying people, but mom and dad love us. They care. No matter what, they're gonna be there. Like, I remember you just advocating for me for accommodations and just that I had problems. And I'm pretty sure that's the only reason I was even able to trust adults at all after that.
It would be hard if the people who are supposed to protect you, if they
And
were
that was
all
the thing.
failing.
The adults
Yeah.
were supposed to protect me, like, and they didn't. And it seemed like you and dad were the only ones who cared. And it meant a lot. It meant a lot to notice you guys doing things and trying. Because, like, you didn't always succeed. But the fact that you were trying and that you believed me meant so much.
And I would say too to parents, parents need to change their expectations a little too, because I could still be going crazy if I were grieving the Isabel that used to be. The Isabel that used to sing solos and speak in public and had all this confidence. So even though your experiences have stripped some of those things away, the wisdom and compassion and everything that you've gained far outweigh any of that loss. And you've found different strengths that you didn't know that you had. And you wouldn't have developed if it weren't for the stinky stuff that you have to go through. If you had to tell other adults, parents, or teachers, or anyone dealing with a child who has chronic anything, what advice would you give as far as what's the most helpful thing they could do and what should they not do?
Let the kids know that you believe them and care, that you're going to be their advocate, that you're going to be there with them through everything. And also, don't try to push them past their limits. If they say that they're at their limit, listen to them. Because that was the thing that bothered me the most, like with teachers and even people who believed me. It's like, oh, you can go a little bit further. And I'm like, no, I cannot go a little bit further. I'm at my limit. I don't even like talking. If you know I'm speaking up about this, it means we have something going drastically wrong. Like I'm
If you're going to bother
voluntarily.
inconvenience
Oh yeah.
people, it's
If
for a
I
reason.
am voluntarily bothering someone when I was that age, then you know something is wrong.
Right, right, right. Well, I'm proud of you and I appreciate you sharing your story. What Isabel is doing now, by the way, since she doesn't like this whole sensory thing, she told me, I think it was your senior year, I like science, not people.
Yeah, I
So
think
we
it was senior
stumbled on
year.
the perfect career for Isabel. Do you want to share with the world what you're
Sure.
doing?
Um, I'm working to become a medical lab technician. If if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably had to get blood drawn or do other lab work and get it sent off to the lab. I am the lab person. I am the one doing the test and telling you, yeah, there's definitely something wrong here. We don't know what yet, but there's something wrong.
Which allows her to have limited interaction with the public, a quiet workspace.
Yeah, like there's one thing I've learned. There's a lot more talking to my colleagues than I expected. But I do not have to interact with new people on a daily basis like other people do in the healthcare field, and I will take what I can get at this point.
Absolutely. And I will say to Isabel, I have not had to push Isabel because as she feels better, and I think this is true for most people, but as she feels better, she pushes herself. She did not enjoy being sick. She wasn't in her room, not going anywhere and avoiding other people because she was lazy or wasn't willing to try hard things. It's because she was sick. And as she's felt better a little bit at a time, she has pushed herself and does things that are uncomfortable, but she also knows when she's done. And then she just goes to her room and ignores everyone, which she can do. She doesn't have children. She doesn't have those responsibilities. And that allows her to have something to give later. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Izzy. Do you have any parting words for us?
It gets better. It's not going to be quick, but you can get better. This isn't the be and be all. This isn't what you're going to be like for life. There are ways to get better, and even if there isn't, there's things that can at least make it better. So.
Well, and I think too, not defining yourself by your illness. Like you said, once you knew what this was called, that itself was empowering, and you can focus on all of the limitations, or you can figure out what to do about it and do what you can, because I think of all of the little things that really added up. You definitely are that person who was willing to try new things. And like you said, if something helped even a little with your migraines, you focused on the fact that they were helping a little instead of saying, oh, 80% of it's still there. You'd say, oh, it's 20% better. And then we keep looking for the next 10 or 20%. So
and that was a big part of the journey before we found out the babesia, is you dug and you found one little thing, and then you fixed that, and then you just kept digging and digging and digging until we were just at migraines.
Right. Which is huge.
Which was huge considering I was, laying on the floor crying, clutching my stomach.
I know. Well, and why don't we close too with the anxiety piece of it? Because I think this is kind of educational for people with the anxiety and the depression. It was so intense and out of nowhere. And I believe now that it was probably a Pan's Pandas type presentation. But Isabel did at one point, we started Lexapro. We tried some other things. And I know the Lexapro helped because before you were on it, you were, like you said, on the floor crying hysterically and didn't know why. And when you started it, you weren't. But then we decided, you've been on this for 10 years. We really don't want you to be on it forever. We tried going off slowly. It didn't really work. So we used her Intellix DNA test and said, okay, how can we optimize like serotonin production, serotonin receptor function? Like what are all her genetic vulnerabilities? We did that for a good 6 months and have been backing off Lexapro since then. And she's down from 20 to 5 milligrams and doing great. And over the school break, we'll probably take her off. But she's been so willing to try hard things, and I've been proud of that too. Do you want to share a little bit about the anxiety, depression piece of it and some of the things we've done?
That's actually something I wanted to add. I was very depressed for a while. Like, I don't even know if it had anything to do with the illness, but like, how do I put this in words? Not because I was depressed because I was sick, but I was sick and depressed. It was there. And I started to get better, and I noticed my anxiety coming back. I'm like, why am I so anxious again? I haven't been this since like, I don't know, when I was 10. And then I realized, oh, it's because I'm feeling things again. And apparently the first emotion your body decides to give you back after depression is anxiety. And so it was like very hard because I'm like, it almost got worse before it got better. And so I had to tackle my anxiety, which I haven't been dealing with since I've gotten depressed because I had literally no energy to care about anything. And so I started to do the thing like, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's my backup plan? And just like, that's all I can do. And also like, just telling, like, pretending the little annoying voice that is very, very anxious inside your head is just someone really, really annoying. Like this really annoying person who clearly does not need you to give them any more attention than they already have. And just like, you can even do it in like people who are like really ridiculous. Like, yeah, sure, Sherlock, what's next? The earth is round. The earth is flat. What are you going to say next? What
Right.
nonsense. Like, you're going to look at this person and be like, yeah, and the earth is flat, man. Of course that's going to happen. Somehow I'm going to crash the car and end all life as we know it, obviously. I mean, who else
You just
would
talk
do that?
back to your anxiety.
Yeah, you talk back. You sass it back,
Yeah.
honestly. You, like, you give them a look and you be like, okay. Can I go
and I
on
think
now?
it's interesting because we have tried a variety of things with all of you, counseling, medication, supplements, whatever. We found that for the most part, and this is not a dig on it at all because it's helped some people, but for the most part, counseling wasn't that helpful.
It was not.
It's been other things.
It was not. Like, they have, anytime I went to counseling, I do not remember any coping skills they have given me that have actually worked. Like,
because
it's
you're
stuff
dealing
I
with
fo-
something physiological that they just didn't understand.
Yeah. Like, it's other people with anxiety that have told me, hey, this helps. And I try it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you just find what works best for you. And apparently for me, it's imagining my annoying voice as this ridiculous person and thinking, what's the worst thing that can happen, and giving up a backup plan.
I love it. You've logicked your way through it.
I know it. It's like, that's another thing people don't understand. Even with all this, I still have anxiety. There's only so much of my anxiety I can logic my way through. Because it's
Right.
not logical.
Right, right. But you stick with it, and you manage to. I don't know. I think your science-like brain really helps you in this situation because you're able to analyze and assess things. You do what you can, try to let go of what you can't, and you know that because other things have improved, they will continue to improve. And your patience is awesome. So thank you for coming on today.
Glad to be here, Mom.
All right. I love you. Thank you to Isabel for sharing her story. And remember to our listeners to have hope because you were made to be whole.
Have a podcast question or suggestion? Text or call us on the podcast info line at 330-439-0686. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to be notified when new episodes release. And remember, you were made to be whole.